today's session will be focusing on Unit 4 under theories and approaches to governance and PAM, standing for Public Administration and Management. So what we're going to look at now is that we want to understand the origin of theories and approaches and their importance to governance and to public administration and management. So the key thing here to keep in mind is that theories and approaches begins the foundation to governance and to public administration as a discipline and as a practice, meaning that theories and approaches lays the foundation as to how the public sector is to be governed and how public administration is to be taught and practiced at institutions of higher learning, as well as being practiced within the public sector. So you want to understand what informs your public administration and what also informs your way of governance within the settings of public administration. So let's go ahead and look at the learning outcomes that will be required to cover. As we are going to the learning unit, I want you to understand that it is all about you taking your time to understand the concept of, or let me just say, the term theories and approaches, because at the end of the day, you want to be so informed as to how do you deal with theories in public administration. Remember, most of the concepts or most of the units that we've covered, the topics, most of them emanate from these theories and approaches. So here are the learning outcomes that I want you to be aware of. So by the end of this unit, you should be able to explain the theories and approaches to governance in general, as well as in PAM. So you must be able to outline the nature of theorizing and theories. I will explain what theorizing means, and also as well as what are theories. Now you must also manage to explain the nature and scope of theories within public administration and management. At least reveal 3 broad categories of approaches applicable to research in social sciences, as well as identify and explain the respective approaches applicable to public administration and management. There are a lot of them, but you will see as you go through your materials to see which ones are more commonly used in public administration. Ascertain the scope of the respective functional domains or study focus area of PAM. Also, you must be able to indicate at least 2 theories for each of the respective functional domains of public administration and management. Very, very important. Now, for the sake of understanding our introduction here is that as students, you must understand that there are multiple theories that you must understand so that you can be able to locate and see the importance of how the executive arm of government functions. Again, this will help you to understand the direct scientific inquiry into governance related matters, because at the end of the day, like I said, that governance related matters, for them to be resolved or to be a success, must be guided by certain theories and approaches. Again, this will also help you to understand the application of theory in practice, and also not just to expose you to these theories, but to also understand how theories are being designed and constructed. Because Theories don't just emanate. Someone must introduce them, and they must find their voice or their foundations in public administration. So you must be able to understand that new theory development is essential for public administration. So in most cases, when we talk about new theories being developed, in most cases it emanates from issues of public administration, maybe failing to meet some certain expectations, or maybe trying to allow public administration to survive in a certain setting. So very, very important. I can give you one of the new theories that were developed after traditional public administration, known as the new public management, that was used to actually respond to some of the demands that the traditional public administration could not meet or satisfy. So because of that new public management theory, public administration was seen to have borrowed from the from the private sector management practices or logic that help government to actually evolve into what we see today. You talk about the introduction of public entities or state-owned enterprises. Those are all because of the new public management theory. So there's a lot that goes on and on. And then we talk about also the post-new public management theory that also helps you to understand why the new public theory had some cracks that needs to be reconsidered. So you go on and on. These things help us to understand the foundation of theory. So those theories, they end up being practiced, as I was mentioning the issues of the new public management theories and the post new public management theory. So what we're actually saying is that practice cannot exist without theory. Theory is precede practice. That's all that we can say. So for you to understand this is that there's a visual content of theory to practice that can be understood that I have in the next slide. Here you first understand that um, one thing that you must know is that theory is a particular theory we apply to make sense of the phenomenon or informing what and how we do things. That is theory. And then theorizing. What is theorizing? Theorizing is has to do with philosophical dimensions, meaning to think about thinking. And before you think, there must be a way that you think that way. So what and why do we observe this or do this? Those are some of the questions that you have to answer. So the answers lead to the theory construction. That's how you come up with the construction of theory. And then practice. What is practice? Practice is a phenomenon we observe or the things that we do. That is called practice. In other words, public administration can be a theory. I'm just giving an example. And then when you practice it, you actually practicing that theory right now, what you've been taught and so forth. And then explanation, you're making sense or sense making process to understand and comprehend the phenomenon. In other words, you need to explain what kind of a theory and what it's all about. And then empirical investigation is more like empirical research, where you verify the applicability of the theory to comprehend the phenomenon. In other words, just because there's a theory and a practice and so forth, that practice to finally be something that is practical in all its entirety, there must be some research that was done to verify the applicability and its practicability. So in other words, before you can talk about let me just say, permanent practice of a certain theory. The empirical investigation must clearly ensure and verify and also show all sides as to how research that was conducted, let me just say, by a group of researchers and also those that are actually dealing with such theoretical perspectives are actually doing it in practice. In other words, you want to make sure, for example, when you talk about public administration, we always talk about it being the application of public law and so forth. So we want to understand how that public law is being executed, and then you conduct research from the national government to understand how the executive branch or the executive uh, branch led by the president deals with the application of public administration. So you conduct research with ministers, ask them questions. I mean, they can tell you from the new um, public sector regulations, what is it that have been doing since 1999, as it was introduced on the 1st of July 1999, the new public uh, service regulations. So those are some of the things that you understand. And then you understand that from then they began to delegate some of their management functions to the provincial government and so forth, decentralizing some of its functions, management of certain programs, projects, and not everything though, but some of those cases. So all of that is what we've seen when we conducted empirical investigation as to does really public administration exist. And again, to confirm to that, you look at chapter, I think is, yeah, I think you can check chapter 9 institutions, also check your chapter 10. You see that public administration is being acknowledged in the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, the values and principles of public administration. Very important to understand. That is proof that empirical investigation was done. Those theories, they do talk to the practical part of it. Very important. Now, again, you can talk about um, the nature of theorizing and theories. So there's a guy, Caden, in 1971, he demarcated theory into four constituents. So what he's trying to say here is that number one, theory has to deal with in a positions, hypotheses, and so forth. So you really need to understand these things so that you don't end up losing your footing. So very important to understand. Now, I was just searching some of those things so that you see what it's all about here. Again, these are the four constituents that you need to understand. So let's just look at number one. A postulate is an assumption that has not yet been directly proved, meaning that this is the foundation or the beginning of theory. It has to do with the belief about the theory. In other words, it's an assumption to indicate possibilities, and that helps drive people to reach those possibilities. So it is a descriptive, explanatory, and concerns itself with the question what and why. In other words, it begins with what and why. In other words, a theory has to tell you what it's about and why it's about that. So that's why it's so important. Number two, definitions. Definitions help us explain the term used in postulations, and also extend definition become theoretical framework. So in public administration, we have this thing called theoretical frameworks to support your research or your theory. So that theoretical framework must help us understand the foundation and the position as to what your theory is all about. So very, very important. Propositions indicate the relationship between the concepts and terms derived from postulates and definitions. They indicate what will happen should a certain requirement be met. So what this means is that your theory needs to give us a link between concepts and terms. What is it that your theory tries to develop? Because I believe that in terms of theory and theorizing, this is more important, particularly at your PhD level, where you introduce or you develop a new theory, because this is where, or that is a level where you normally come up with new uh, propositions as to what could your research, your PhD research um, provide in the field of public administration. So there's also what we call hypothesis. So a hypothesis measures propositions, and as such is most useful to us. So what you want there is that a hypothesis has to deal with measurement of your theories and how your theory will be useful to us. In other words, we want to understand why your theory is going to be so important to us and how can it be used to measure the propositions of the terms and the concept that your theory is trying to introduce or is already introducing within the field. Very, very important, because once you do not measure this, you'll be in a dire problem. So normally in research, you find that after your aim and objectives, there is hypothesis, or what is the hypothesis of your research. You'll actually define that or provide that. So it's very, very important to understand why hypothesis. So in most cases, hypothesis, I can just say it's a proposed explanation that you made on the basis of your limited evidence that your research is providing. In other words, it's where you begin the starting point of your further investigation. In other words, you're giving us heads up as to what your theory is trying to open up to. In other words, you're beginning to start something that can be further investigated. That's what your hypothesis, part of your theory is all about. Very, very important. Now, there's also the nature and scope of theories of public administration and management. Now, as a discipline, public administration and management is characterized as an extremely broad field of study that includes a broad range of micro, social, and governance theories. So, Buddhist in 1996 came up with a thought that PAM can be thought as a social science because, number one, there is a board of knowledge that has been tested and validated over the years. Also, it is an academic discipline that can be broken down into systematic study and research steps. It is also a university subject that enjoys universal recognition and status. It is also a field of application in public administration, government institutions of its status in South Africa. That's why it's important It is formally embedded in the Constitution. Very, very important to understand. Now, these are some of the additional social science classifications that certain authors really agree on. So in other words, public administration is informed by theory. Also, it's an applied theory. It's also a tested theory. And we are also building or creating theory. So these are the four research uh, applications that you need to really know, because when a question comes and say mention four, or what are four classification of the application of theory, you must be able to provide this: informed by theory, applied theory, tested theory, or building or creating theory, or provide four classification of social sciences in public administration and management. Just know we're talking about these four. Very, very important. Why are we saying this? Is because public administration has already been informed by theory. We can talk about the works of Woodrow Wilson, 1887. It has been applied uh, throughout the public sector. It's already been tested. That is why it has undergone all those public administration paradigms. And we're already creating theories or building theories. That's why we have new public management theory. Now we do have post new public management theory. So there will always be new theories that will be realized within public administration. Very, very important. Now, there are also approaches to the study of PAM. These are just the three um, approaches or main group of approaches that can be identified for social research, but they are the main ones. Very, very important. The approaches that are applicable, which are also part of this section. So we have normativism, empiricism, we have behavioralism. So these three will be provided. I'm not going to read them. You just have to know that normativism is when scholars look at the subject through the eye of what it ought to be or what it should be. In other words, the scholar will consider particular norms, ethical standards, values that should be applied in government affairs. So, for example, if a scholar wants to figure out if a state hospital did a good job treating a COVID-19 patient, he or she will look at the behavior of healthcare workers through the lens of what we call normativism or normativism. Very, very important, because at the end of the day, it's you as a scholar or as a researcher or as a student, for you to find out information, primary data, you need to actually be in the field and check or observe the healthcare workers, and also you can also interview them, just find out. And then you also have imperialism. Here it says it's a theoretical description of what exists. Very, very important. Behavioralism. Behavioralism. What it's saying here is that it's when scholars study the conduct or behavior of a particular person in a state hospital or institution. Like it can be anywhere. You can study your lecturers, your students, based on a particular topic that you want to find out. Maybe let's just say the relationship or the lecture student relationship. For you, maybe you just want to observe how that goes. You can just observe them and at the end of the day come up with your own conclusions. So here are the five related or PAM related approaches. These are the five that you must know. And these are the most known, like I said, the politics administration dichotomy approach. This one of the oldest one. I think we've touched on this when we're dealing with your paradigms in public administration. Even this, the business management approach, although we did not refer to it as business management approach, we did talk about issues of new public management approach. It follows under this one. So you just need to understand what it's all about. I'm not going to go through them. I already provided them. The conventional approach, the generic administrative approach, everything is provided there. So with this one, the last one, it was the works of um, Professor J.J.N. Clute, who introduced or who wrote the book Introduction to Public Administration. So this book is the one that actually provided South African students or South African public administration with generic administrative functions. We know them as policy making, personnel administration, financing, organizing, methods and procedures, and controlling. It is more like those of the post-COP, but these ones are within the South African sphere or South African settings. Very, very important. So all these approaches is for students to understand how they ought to be understood. Very, very important. But I don't think there's much from this. More information, you can just research the six generic processes. This you must know as a public administration student. Don't make a mistake. Policy making, personal administration, financing, organizing, methods and procedures, and controlling. Very, very important. So that's it for now. Until we meet again next time. Thank you.